All right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Hey Coach Radio. I am your host, Will Grazione, and today I am joined by world-renowned competition preparation coach, Paul Revelia, owner of TeamProPhysique.com. And I'm excited, Paul. This has been 15 years in the making. Very excited to have an amazing conversation with you and provide value to all the listeners here.
Yeah, I think maybe people would be surprised to find out that we live down the street from each other.
I think so. We've never actually collaborated on anything, I think. I mean, besides back in the day when we'd go to like the Olympia, the Arnold Classic, NPC Nationals and all those.
I used to come down to your Gold's Gym every now and then.
Yep.
Our kids are the same ages, so there was a lot of kids stuff, birthday parties. Yeah.
There's a ton of history, which I know we probably won't dive into on this podcast specifically. But I'd love to have you back on for maybe like a series or something, because there's tons of stuff to catch up on. Because for those of you who aren't aware, Paul and I's relationship goes all the way back to 2010 when we met at the NGA Pro American Championships in Coral Springs. Lane Norton was competing in the pro bodybuilding class, and I was competing in the amateur class. And that's kind of where coaching for the both of us actually originated.
Yeah, I wasn't even coaching in 2010 yet. I was I had turned pro in 2009 in the NGA. Mm-hmm. And so I was just and Lane had just moved to Tampa around that time. So I was just along for the ride at that point. Lane was becoming one of the most well-known people in the space. He was in Tampa. Mm-hmm. So we were going to the gym together, going to seminars together. Like I found out about USF exercise. Like it was just this whole change of direction for me.
Yeah, it was a huge bubble, and we were both blessed to be in a great position to be entered into it.
I saw the video series that Lane had on bodybuilding.com, Life of a Natural Pro. And I was like, oh, I didn't know natural bodybuilding was a thing. I thought I had to look like Ronnie Coleman or Jay Cutler, Phil Heath. At that time it was probably more like Dorian Yates, but it was like, oh, I love going to the gym. Now I can actually take it to the next level and not feel like I have to jump on steroids.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Same thing for me. I was not aware natural bodybuilding existed. I actually found Lane Norton and Dr. Joe Klemczewski. So I think we both share that same commonality as well. And what I was referring to when I was talking about kind of like the dream was the career that I wanted. I didn't know it was even possible to be an online coach because I didn't know anybody that actually did it.
Oh yeah.
Right.
I can't even say that was a dream.
So let's do this before we get super caught up back in 2010, 11, 12. If you would, for the audience that here at Hey Coach Radio that doesn't know who Paul Revelia is, can you just go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, I mean, long story short is I'm the owner of Pro Physique. And so I guess, I consider myself a coach, and I try to be, one of the best coaches or the best coach in the world at what I do. I take that part very seriously. And then the coaching thing has led to, starting a business. I've also competed myself many times. And so I've gone back to school. So it's hard to define, I'm a dad. It's a lot of things, but I think figuring out that I was so passionate about coaching is what changed the direction of my life. When you talk about the dream, what we do now didn't exist when we hired Lane. He was one of 5 people probably doing it, him, Dr. Joe, and a few others. Yeah. So yeah, now it's been I think this is our 15th year Pro Physique. And believe me, those first couple of years weren't very impressive, but it's been an evolution.
Let me highlight that passion really quick. So you said that you kind of fell in love with coaching in and of itself. What was it specifically about the process of coaching an athlete through the entire process, watching them walk across stage, the athlete that was not yourself, watching them walk across stage, achieve top honors, and then, obviously you can celebrate with the client. What was that passion? What started it all off?
So for me, bodybuilding was like my little private thing. I didn't want to be a personal trainer. I didn't want to be a coach. I fought coaching for years. So when I first started working with Lane, I would ask a lot of questions, and I was curious by nature, and I had been reading about nutrition. I mean, I've got, Arnold's Modern Encyclopedia back there. I've got a bunch of nutrition books, because I was into that in high school, not thinking as a career, just purely curiosity. So when I got into competing, people would ask, hey, do you coach? And I'd say no. And then Lane kept saying, hey, I think you could be good at this. And it was a time when, you know, this, Will, like he was getting way more inquiries than he even knew what to do with.
Yep.
And I always said no. And finally, he approached me about someone who had hired a coach. The coach had fired him. And he said, would you coach him for free? I can't do it. And I said, absolutely. I'll do that, because then I feel like, okay. And I also asked for Lane's blessing for like, if I could get support from him. No problem. So we went through the process together. He was a teenage male, ended up winning. I think he like won his natural novice bodybuilding class. And I kind of just put him through the same process that Lane put me through, you know, taking body fat off, you know, but taking care of him, you know, refeed days, training intelligently, doing cardio the best way we thought how, you know, being very much in touch with him, peaking him how I thought was best to peak, you know, the best methods at that time that I had been, you know, privy to. And he succeeded. And at the end of it, his mom handed me a card, and I believe it had $300 in it. And she was like, I just want you to know you gave my son his passion back for bodybuilding, because he wanted to quit after that coach, because he had received like a cookie cutter meal plan from a famous IFBB guy and questioned it, as you should. And of course, the guy said, you're fired, never message me again, and kept the money. So the mom was like, you really reinvigorated his passion for this. So, you know, thank you. So I took that $300, and I remember just feeling like, wow, like I'm going to start a business with this. And that's what I did.
Yeah, that's incredible, man. It's interesting. I always like to ask that question to see where the passion started. So yesterday I had to actually talk to Astrid, who's a coach from Team Bio Lane, and her passion of the origin of why she started, right? Completely different than the origin and the passion of essentially why we started. And I don't know if you remember him, but Hussein Daher, he was one of my very first, you know, male open bodybuilder clients. And he actually also happened to be one of my best friends in the world. And I didn't charge him $1 for the very first prep. You know, I was just like, hey, dude, I did it. This is how I did it. I want to guide you to that point as well. And a lot of people even still, you know, granted, I haven't competed since 2012. You know, I've been very lean a couple of times, probably within 6 to 8 weeks out. But like people ask me, will you compete again? And in all honesty, I'm not quite sure, because of the reality that I enjoyed helping people achieve their goal of turning professional more than I actually enjoyed turning professional myself. So some people as coaches may be like, well, that's kind of that I guess that handing over of the key per se, right? Where it's like, you've done it yourself, you know what it feels like, but then you injected yourself into coaching, you helped other people achieve the same thing, maybe got more passion out of that and just decided to commit to that. I would also say, like, at that time, I felt like that 2012 prep just exhausted me, man. And I was like, I need something. I really want to make a shift in my career. And I just so happened to be working with some really elite natural bodybuilders back then. And we basically hit the circuit in the entire state and won most of the shows. And at that point, I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this, the style of prep that we did in 2012, because I also competed in 2012, exhausted me too. I do not prep like that anymore. Okay. I don't do any HITT cardio. I take a lot more, you know, I'll call them like, you know, recovery days or recovery weeks in the process. So it's really changed my style of both competing and prepping for myself and my athletes. You and I were at the verge of this new style of evidence-based approaches. And some of that evidence was misconstrued, you know, like sounded good on paper. The research looked good, but in application with what we were actually doing, I didn't think it now I know it wasn't the best way. You know, I've had a few people from that era come back and prep with me now, and it's a different animal. Like it's much more sustainable. Of course, when you get shredded for natural bodybuilding, there's going to be that phase at the end, but it's much less daunting when you hit a wall and you take a recovery instead of pushing harder. It changes things.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think back then, high volume training, lack of recovery, high intensity interval cardio all the time was like the Bible, you know, and I think it just exhausted us.
For me, it's the HITT cardio. The HITT cardio, you know, 2 to 3 sessions a week. And looking back at just how gassed I would be that entire day and maybe even the next day. I think you and I even did a HITT cardio video in the gym over here.
Crunch, I think.
Yeah, Crunch when it first opened. Me, you, and Lauren and Ryan. We did a fun little HITT cardio video. We did some stuff in my driveway too. But like, I'll never forget. I had a like aha moment. I went back to school to study exercise science, and I had an aha moment when we were studying human physiology, and the teacher said, the fuel source that your body uses for an exercise is based on the intensity. And prior to that, I had always thought, oh, if you're fasted in the morning, you're burning fat because there's no carbs in your system. No, your body is smarter than that. So the fuel source that your body is using is based on the intensity of an exercise. Well, what burns more fat? Lower intensity exercise. So I started to realize a lot of the reasons I was hungry, grumpy, and tired in prep was because of the style of cardio I was doing. Because we weren't doing intervals, Will. We were doing life and death sprints. Like if you weren't falling over at the end of a bike sprint, like we were shaking the bike off the foundation on those sprints.
Oh, I know. I remember.
Yeah, like that type of cardio, like shit, dude. My resting heart rate at one of my preps was like 33 beats a minute.
Yeah. I remember because I had just came out of playing college football. And, you know, they're talking about sprinting. And I'm like, sprinting by itself isn't enough. I got to put a sled on. I got to drag weight. I got to push a prowler. And it's like 30 seconds all out. And I felt dead at like 19 seconds. And you're just supposed to just keep on pushing through it. I mean, the level of exhaustion during that prep was insane. And I actually remember now, and I am going to open this up and talk more about the recovery modalities that we use. I call it dieting smarter. But the recovery modalities that we can use now inside of a fat loss phase to essentially allow the athlete to not be completely exhausted at the end of a contest preparation or even a fat loss phase, I think is a really big reason why, you know, for you injecting that level of intelligence and that level of real science and evidence-based coaching practice into the realm of the NPC and the IFBB really helps you stand out because it is intelligent. And the fact that so many of the people that you work with likely come from a past history of working with people that, you know, in all honesty, it's the complete opposite. It's maybe 2-3 hours of cardio per day, under 1,000 calories, and they're essentially not recovering at all. And most of the time when you remember, like back then, we'd actually start to feed gals more calories, kind of back them off the intensity and back them off some things. And they actually started to respond really, really well. So there's obviously 15 years of history here, ladies and gentlemen. And we'll probably have another podcast episode about this, but I want to dive in because like I said in the beginning, Paul, the way that I see, you know, Paul in the coaching space, I see him as the best evidence-based physique coach for bikini in the world. And so I want to get a really good understanding of, you know, what do you feel with this transition or this implementation of the bikini division in the NPC and the IFBB? Because you and I were both around in the onset of the very first bikini show, right? And so when we saw the very first gal win, I mean, obviously it was impressive to see, but now we look 15 years into the senior and the look is completely different. So what are your initial thoughts on the introduction of the fit model division in the NPC and the IFBB?
Yeah, fit model is a correction. It's a correction of the bikini division. It's basically, so if you think back to when bikini started, 2012, 2013 is when they first started having like the amateur shows, and then they started having the pro shows in 2014, 2015. If you think back to then, the dominant division for women was figure. And it was a very nice look. You know, you think back to Erin Stern, who was a lifetime natural athlete. She was an almost Olympic qualified high jumper. If that tells you anything about her athletic ability. You had a look that she was on Oxygen magazine. A lot of women desired that look. Then the sport became an undesirable look. Figure took on steroids. The women started to get masculinized. And that's their choice. That's fine. But what you do there is you start to marginalize who wants to do it, minimalize it. And now you're having women seeing a competitor that they no longer want to look like at the top of the sport. You add a bikini division where women are, at least initially, just coming out in off the rack suits and look like they lift weights a couple days a week and jog, nothing special. Right. And so you start having women being like at the forefront of a division where Now women are like, wow, those women are beautiful. I want to look like that. And so that sport took on a life of its own. And for the better part of a decade, it was fine. But over the last couple of years, it's really become a drug competition. There are no more natural bikini pros competing at the highest level of the sport. I used to be so proud that I had, you know, in 2022, I had 2 girls at the Olympia that were lifetime natural athletes, and one that finished 4th at the Bikini Olympia. So like, I was like, hey, we're going to go win the Olympia naturally. It's continued to evolve now where the bikini division is masculinized, probably more than the figure division was 15 years ago. They are deeper voices, thicker jaws, huge shoulders, huge glutes, vascularity. And you had athletes competing at that time. I promise you, if you follow them and see what they look like now, it's a different division. And if that's the direction they want to go, great. But I did something pretty interesting last year. So I've been going to national shows for a decade, like every national show for a decade. Last year, the first national show of the year, which is called NPC Junior USA's, the bikini division gives out 4 pro cards at that show. They had 52 competitors show up. 3 years before, they had 166.
Right.
So I went, what's happening? Why is there 52? Well, think about this. That's 52 girls across 8 classes. That's 6 or 5 a class. That's shocking at a national show.
Yeah.
It used to be, you used to put it on your Instagram if you were first call outs at nationals. Now you're walking into a show, you're already top 5 having started the show yet. It was shocking. I was like, what's happening? So I created an Excel spreadsheet last year, and I've tracked every single national show for the last 10 years. Last year, there was about 700 girls that crossed the national stage. Rewind a couple of years, it was 1,800.
Wow.
So I think with the NPC, which for those that don't know, the NPC, the National Physique Committee, is the amateur division of the IFBB. The way they get paid is people register for a show and they have to sign up for their NPC card. Right. So if that's one division for women, forget about figure. Figure doesn't exist anymore. That's going away. Wellness, they've added also very small in our country. So now you have the bikini division, which is the dominant division in the whole sport. The whole sport, it's the biggest division, shrinking. I think the office, they paid attention. They went, whoa, what is this about? Is this about the cost of competing? And they addressed a bunch of things in this. So I think they thought it was the cost of competing. Well, they made the cost go down because you're not allowed to wear a fancy bikini. Instead of wearing a $700 suit, you're wearing a maximum $100 suit. So that I feel like competitors felt like they were forced to buy these, $1,000 suits. Hair, makeup, tanning. You go into a show, you're down $2,000 before the show starts. So they're making the sport more affordable. I'm also assuming they're trying to pull the drugs out of the sport because they are like no capped shoulders, no tie-ins, no etched in abs. It's a much more 2014 bikini look.
Yeah, I was looking at the rules the other day on the NPC site for the fit model division, and it basically just kind of like what I thought to be, okay, they're basically redoing bikini over again because the look of the bikini now is so different than the look was in the first pro show 2014. And I even remember going to NPC Nationals with you and Lane, right, when we had a good friend of ours walk across that stage. I could not fathom how many girls were in each class. I was like, how do you even? I mean, they think there was like between 30 and 40 in each class. It was over like 300.
Yeah, so Lauren, are you talking about the year Lauren Conlon won?
Lauren won, and then you had Lauren win the next year, and then Zoe won
Lauren
pro card, and yes. And then I had Zoe win, I think, a year after you had Lauren Dannemiller. Zoe didn't win nationals, but she won her pro card as a natural. And I know that was something that we were all very proud of, was the fact that we could take a natural gal, walk her across like the biggest quote unquote stage, and they could win. So you've seen the numbers dwindle down in the bikini division, and that's essentially because the look is getting so much further out of reach.
I don't want to make that as the only assumption because it's not just national shows. Like, I go to a lot of the regional shows, and the bikini division at some of these regional shows used to have 80 or 100 girls in just the bikini division. Now we're seeing 20 or 30.
No kidding.
So, you know, at the national shows, you could argue, you know, I have a lot of thoughts on the nationals. In my opinion, they give out way too many pro cards. You can't give out, in my opinion, 16 pro cards at a national show when you have 100 people there.
Understandable. Yep.
16% of athletes should not get a pro card, because now what you're doing is you're weakening the amateur division. All those girls, maybe they should have given out 3-4 pro cards, and then you would have had those 13 or 14 other girls coming back the next year to fight for it. That raises the level up of everybody. When you're constantly just scraping the top competitors off, you're never going to get competitive national girls. They're just going to. I literally saw a girl last year at one show one weekend do true novice and turn pro the next.
No kidding.
Granted, she looked great.
Yeah.
She fit the criteria, but that would have never happened years ago. Never.
Right. Yeah, I'm paying attention. I'm trying to listen to what's happening. And obviously it seems like the new edition is getting some backlash, but I'd imagine it's the same backlash that the figure girls back in 2013-14 thought when bikini entered in the first place. Right. And now we have the bikini division. The look is so much more, maybe not. It's a little bit out of reach for most people. Now they're bringing this division in. Have you heard kind of like anybody kind of fueling their frustrations or putting their frustrations out there with the implementation of the new class?
Probably not, because when they introduced bikini and men's physique, that was all you heard was negativity. Oh my gosh. Guys in board shorts, you don't even have to train your legs. They don't even look like they lift. Girls in bikinis that don't even can't even squat 300 pounds or whatever. Like, you heard all the arguments from the other divisions. Well, guess what? That quadrupled the size of the sport. It's called inclusivity. You're giving more people an opportunity to get up on stage and compete. You time that with the rise of social media platforms, and bodybuilding was lit on fire. Now what you're having is the exposure of these same athletes over and over again, that people are like, yeah, I don't want that.
Yeah, I'm actually seeing this as a phenomenal opportunity. And obviously I can understand really good business move, because you're watching the numbers drop. So what do we do to bring more people into the industry to keep the sport in and of itself growing and fueling? Let me ask you this, because obviously with the new addition of the fit model division, and then you also look at what men's physique was, and you look at what men's physique is now, what are your thoughts on them actually launching a new division for men that's smaller than physique?
Yeah, I think they'll probably do that within the next year. I think
that's what I was assuming as well.
The same thing that happened to the bikini division is starting to happen to the men's physique division. It's starting to shrink. But again, they're giving out a ton of pro cards, and you're constantly scraping that top layer off. And I think right now what they have a problem with the IFBB, in my opinion, is they have too many pros. There's so many pros. I mean, my roster at one point in the last couple of years was like 75% pros. Yeah, it's too much. Like, it shouldn't be that way. And it should not be that way. There should be way more amateurs in a sport than pros, because nothing's worse than getting your pro card and then realizing like you don't even belong in that yet. And now they got to stop, competing for a couple of years and come back. It retires a lot of people. I've had a lot of girls. So I'll give you an interesting story. 2009, the first time I ever attended a bikini competition. It was the Mid-Florida Muscle Classic in Orlando, Florida. This young lady wins the show. I won't say her name because I don't want to call her out. But I just remember thinking like, damn, she looks awesome. So because I recognized her, I followed her through the years. She ended up getting her pro card that year. The next year, she ended up winning the New York Pro, going to the Olympia, doing all these shows. And then I never heard her name again. I had a consult with her last month.
No kidding.
And she signed up because she wants to come back next year when they offer pro fit model. So she basically left the sport when it got kind of out of hand, and now she's excited about this. And I think that's the kind of excitement that's probably going to be happening around the sport. A lot of people are going to start reconsidering it. There's already been a couple shows where there's been more fit model than bikini. And one thing they're not letting people do, Will, at this division, you're not allowed to cross over. You either do bikini or fit model. You cannot do both.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. The reality that the sport has retired so many pros because of what you have to do to get into that level of elite shape. I was having this conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and basically what I said was, could you imagine if a lot of the retired bikini pros from, the last 5 to 7 years, because the look is so much more attainable, and in all honesty, some of them may be living in that look right now, but they don't want to compromise their health in order to compete again. This is an open opportunity for them to come back to the
Oh,
sport that they may still be super passionate about.
I've had a bunch of those consults already.
Yeah, I believe you. I believe you. Let me dive into this because, obviously with our background in natural bodybuilding and, trying to do things the best way we can to implement evidence-based practices into our coaching strategies. And ultimately you don't get a trophy for being the healthiest version of yourself on stage. You are awarded top honors for what your physique looks like and how you present that physique. But do you think that this could be a potential opportunity for women that aren't willing to compromise their health and do what's needed in order to get there to make them come back to the sport?
Yeah, and I don't think you have to compromise your health even if you want to do PEDs. I think there's an intelligent way you can approach that as well. So to me, it's become more of a personal or a moral or ethical thing for the individual to understand what they want for themselves and their body. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, like I told you, I had fourth place at the Olympia as a lifetime natural.
Yeah.
I think the last 3 years. So the Ben Weider, which is the only natural IFBB pro show to qualify you for the Olympia. This last year, my client won it. Lana, she's a lifetime natural. She's going to the Olympia as a natural athlete. So there are still ways that you can progress through the sport. By the way, Lana also turned pro at the Ben Weider 3 years earlier, right? So like as a natural athlete, she was able to get her pro card and go to the Bikini Olympia.
Yeah, that's impressive to still be able to do that amongst the class. And there's a pathway. If you want to be natural, there's a pathway to get
I've got a bunch of athletes that want to do that. I've also got athletes that are happy to take oxandrolone and other things like TRT that are going to help them be the best version of themselves. So it's about what's right for that person. Yeah. I have limitations on what I'm willing to do. I've said it publicly. I'm not willing to turn a woman into a man. I'm not going to give dosages that are going to change voices, change facial structure, change bodily structure, cause potential harm.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was more referring to, is doing things and prepping people in a more, I guess you would say, in a sense, it's like from a level of care, because we've heard all the horror stories about contest preparation coaches. And I'm sure a lot of the gals that you work with now have their story as well. And then they ultimately find you and they kind of can't believe the difference. Can we talk about some of that? Can you kind of unpack some of the gnarliest stuff that you've heard with regards to the bikini division and how other prep coaches have prepped girls?
I've talked to bikini competitors who were on insulin, growth hormone, multiple compounds, obviously including testosterone, oxandrolone, which most people call Anavar, Winstrol, anti-estrogens, which is, I think, the dumbest thing you can take as a competitor, because your estrogens are already compromised because you're low body fat. So to take an estrogen blocker, this is where you get into some long-term health problems, hair falling out, brittle nails, and then post-show PCOS symptoms. Like, you focus a lot more on that than I do. So you probably are way more in depth with that stuff. I don't typically run into those issues with my athletes.
Yeah, there's surely been a emphasis on recovery for me after the competition. So I don't do as much competition preparation anymore, but a lot of my focus has been on the female side and helping them recover after the competitions are over with, just because they did choose to go that route. So whether it was, I'm not saying anything against a meal plan, because I believe that some people work better with those, but let's just say a woman that never implemented a carb cycle or a diet break, or had their training match their diet, stress management, prioritizing sleep quality, or just overdoing it on cardiovascular exercise for prolonged periods of time. And essentially after the competition was over, they still felt, they didn't feel well, and it almost took them forever to try to recover from that. So where I kind of stepped in was, I was like, well, what do I not know? And my mindset, and you were in the room, but my mindset went back to Pete Fitch and Chris Foss, talking about their blood levels and how their blood work had actually changed from the beginning of their prep to the end of their prep. And I started thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, well, what do I not know about this? And clearly defined, I think that is kind of how we define what metabolic adaptation is. If you're capable of kind of injecting some of the functional medicine practices into the physique development world. Obviously, there's some far out there stuff on that side, but if you can learn how to read and interpret and review blood work, and you can see where their health is at the end of a bodybuilding contest preparation, and then you can also create a strategy or a recovery plan, maybe 4 months later, 5 months later, and then you get some more blood work done. Did we make significant improvements to get them back to being able to optimize their improvement season? I think this is where this big piece is missing. But I will also mention the thing that I saw, and again, I think this is why more than likely a lot of your gals probably don't deal with a lot of this, is because of the way that you prep them, right? So back when I was specifically in bodybuilding and I was prepping females, what I would notice is that if I managed stress and fatigue, if I managed cardio, if I implemented diet breaks, and I implemented maybe a couple of high carb days a week and things that could help them physiologically recover, most of them didn't end up losing their period at all. Right.
Well,
but the ones
I'm
that you would
sure
floor,
you and I were the first coaches to use the term diet break. Like
I have the video on YouTube from 2014, and I'd already been doing it for a year.
Yeah, 2014. What is this year? So, I mean, probably around the same time, because I think we both learned it. Like the Eric Helms was talking quite a bit about it.
For sure.
And to me, that's been the biggest game changer. It's almost like you restore somebody back to a further timeline in prep.
Right.
And so, yeah, I don't ever have those issues with my athletes.
Yeah, I first heard about it, and I'm going to give credit to him. But I worked with Alberto Nunez. I think it was 2014.
Well, and him and Eric are business partners.
Right, exactly. But the thing was, is I saw that he had made back then there wasn't like, really snazzy content like there is now, but maybe he just like screenshotted something and then he posted that thing. And I ended up finding that research study. And basically what it was I was having some issues with some of the gals that I was prepping and the guys. And they were kind of stalling out like in the middle of their prep. And granted, they weren't close to stage lean. And so I saw this study and I was like, okay, 24 hours wasn't enough. And I'm thinking from like a female lens, what's going to help keep them calm? What's going to help keep them oxidizing body fat? And 24 hours of refeeding wasn't enough to stimulate follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone to ultimately upregulate progesterone. 48 hours wasn't enough either, but something happened between hour 48 and hour 72. And then it began to actually resend signaling, but the calories were at a theoretical maintenance level at that time. And I thought to myself, I'm like, well, holy crap, if 3 days did something, because I was working with my wife at the time, right? And I'm trying to figure out the best ways that I can coach her to turn pro and all that. And I'm like, well, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to create a Word doc. And I just want you to fill out, how do you feel right now? And we're going to implement this thing. And I'm going to run it 3 days. I tried it for 3 days. And 3 days worked so well, I said, well, let's try 4. 4 days worked so well, I said, let's try 5. And then ultimately, I got to a point where most of the physique athletes that I was coaching, I gave them a whole week in between the prep. So you played sports, I played sports, we had half times, right? And I said, well, shit, if it works this good, why not kind of bring more life back into the prep, reinvigorate them, allow them to recover, allow them to sleep well, allow their hormones to, quote unquote, I guess, reset themselves, and just allow them to recover, drop stress, allow the flush to happen, right? And many of them would go on to achieve the best condition that they had ever achieved because of the fact that we took a break and they weren't walking zombies at the end of the show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was how I found it. So shout out to 3DMJ and Alberto. But I think nowadays it's still very uncommon. And you and I were having this conversation at your house not too long ago. And you're like, Will, it's still not normal. It's still not common. And so can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what would you like to see change in the physique coaching industry? Because truthfully, there are a lot of women hiring a lot of coaches, but at the end of the day, a lot of these women are never competing again because their health was compromised because of the exercise and nutrition modalities that were implemented by said coach.
I mean, if I could wave my magic wand and say everybody is aware of these things, it would be things like diet breaks, for women, stress management, training volume, just understanding these concepts in a manner that makes prep productive versus just surviving. You mentioned Alberto making a post. When I first realized the value of diet breaks was when I would have competitors do multiple shows. And so we would be, let's say we were struggling to get stage lean. We do our first show, we go into peak week, then we go back to prep, and all of a sudden they're dropping 2 pounds a week. And I'm like, what's happening?
Yeah.
Well, what was peak week? It was a freaking diet break.
It was
Cardio
a diet
went
break.
down, food came up, they went out with their friends and family, had a big meal. They got this stress of the show off of them. They went right back to their diet. 3 weeks later, they're down 4 pounds and they look like a complete different person. Well, why the hell are we waiting till the week before the show to do a peak week? So I started doing mock peak weeks like towards the end of prep. And without a doubt, I found like they looked better. They felt better. They were able to push again. Right. So even if you're not lean enough, you take this recovery phase, now you're raring to go. So yeah, the process of doing multiple shows, if you don't eat like an asshole for a few days, you're going to get better from that. So yeah, it's the same concept. Yeah. But there's coaching is not a defined practice. Like you and I found a coach through a mechanism of like, we saw the result, we heard him speak, and we thought that's our guy. That's not how most people find their coach. They go, oh, I really like this competitor. She's saying such nice things about her coach. Let me go to his page and fill out a request form. Well, what they don't know is that athlete actually hates her coach, but he pays her $3,000 a month to say nice things. And he might be writing.
Wow.
That happens.
Wow.
So, it's an ugly side of the sport. It's, some coaches are smart enough to realize that one athlete can build their whole brand. So they pay them.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. At the same point in time, though, I also, because I'm a very large health advocate, and in all honesty, like it started with my wife. I didn't want her to work with anybody else because the only person in the industry I trusted was Lane. Secondarily to Lane, the only person I trusted was me. So I was like, I'm going to keep learning. I'm going to keep trying to figure it out. And ultimately she was one of the really big reasons why I decided to go into the hormonal realm and learn more about the female physiology, and ultimately how to help prepare the female physiology for a really, productive off season. I guess moving forward to this. So 2025 right now, implementation of the Fit Model division. What do you see happening with the Fit Model division over the next few years? Do you see it growing the sport? Do you see it being a pro to the sport, or do you potentially seeing it becoming a negative?
So I think what it's going to do is it's going to usher out the figure division. Figure division. Well, yeah, it's been shrinking for years, man. Just go look at the numbers. They pulled it out of the Arnold. They don't have it at the Arnold anymore. The young lady that's been the champion for the last 8 years, Sid Gillen, she just retired.
Oh, wow.
So you've got basically the only figure competitor that anybody knows their name is Sid Gillen,
Yeah, she's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, she just retired and she's an amazing person, But so now the sport is being handed off to the next generation of figure competitors who are bigger, gnarlier, more muscular. And, I've been at multiple shows lately, Will, where there was like 1 or 2 figure competitors in the show.
Really? And that's not pro. That's just like the national level.
That's an NPC show.
NPC show.
So then you go, okay, so what's bikini going to become? I think they're going to allow bikini to stay what it is, a very muscular, fit version of the Fit Model division. Fit Model is not a new division. Like it's got a new name. They put a new wrapper on it, but NPC Fit Model is NPC Bikini circa 2012, 2014.
Yeah, I remember.
They even have required the front pose to be the stagger stance pose. You cannot show your profile. Yep. Well, why is that, Will? Because these girls have such big glutes now that's how they're being judged, is the size of that glute in the profile along with the shoulder has to match. How do you build bigger glutes? if you're a woman and you've been training for 10 years, you start taking anabolics, and there are
Mm-hmm.
coaches now that are getting paid kickbacks,
Mm-hmm.
or they're just straight up selling drugs to their clients, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that, but
Yeah.
I don't think that the competitors are aware of that. Like, why is this coach really pushing drugs on me? Oh, because that's more paycheck for them, right?
Yeah.
So there's just some elements to this sport that have, my eyes have been opened, because I've been to the top of the sport. I've had an athlete at the final call outs at the Olympia. Not many coaches can say that. I've also had a world champion in the NGA, a world champion in the WNBF, and a world champion in the OCB. So like, I've coached across all these platforms, and I've seen the writing on the wall for a while. What kept me at the top of the sport was the fact that I kept getting truly phenomenal athletes that trusted me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And to this day, I still have that. So it's like, that's where you get really great results, is a great genetics with a great platform.
Yeah. Well, this is why I wanted to talk to you, because again, I don't think there's really anybody that I could speak with at the level of experience that you have, really like injecting yourself into the sport and really making it your calling and what you do for the last, better part of about 12 to 15 years, literally going to every show every weekend. Like, I know your life. It's like Monday through Thursday, you're in the office and you're grinding. Friday, you fly out. Sunday, you come back. And it's like that for 10 years. You know what I mean? But while we're on the topic of recovery and health and, women kind of being phased out of the industry because they're burned out and all of this, with the Fit Model division, do you believe it's going to require time off? Because the look that I see is something that could very well be attainable and maintainable for a long period of time without necessarily having to peak, without necessarily having to push cardio to really extreme levels. Like, when I think about Fit Model, I'm thinking like previous college athlete, young, fit, looks awesome. She doesn't diet. She's eating over 2,000 calories a day, training 3-4 days a week, doing a level of cardio in which she enjoys doing, and she can maintain that for years. So what do you think about the reality that, while Bikini has retired so many people, Fit Model, basically these gals can compete as often as they want to, because there's really not a lot of proverbial ups and downs?
I think you're nailing it, because the athlete that I just had compete last weekend in Salt Lake City, she did bikini at nationals last year, and she was in first call outs, and she was 6-7 pounds heavier at Salt Lake City. And she was awarded an overall title against multiple competitors who had already won overall titles this year. So she very much fits the criteria. We're not grinding.
Yeah.
We're maintaining.
Yeah. I would also say, with the influx of, obviously the importance and the marketability of social media, there's so many gals out there that do fit the criteria, but because the look that was the Miss Olympia in bikini was so out there, maybe they never chose to compete. So now you have a very big opportunity for a lot of these gals with very substantial followings to actually come into an industry, put more eyes on the industry, and ultimately impact more, I guess you would say, motivate and inspire more people to get involved.
Yeah, I love the idea of inclusivity. And I think when the sport was at its biggest, if you looked at the girls who were at the top of the sport, your Janet Leyugs, India Paulino, Ashley Kaltwasser, those looks at that era, Courtney King, every girl wanted to look like that. Yep. Nice full glutes, nice tight core, but still stunningly pretty,
Yeah.
I honestly, I struggle with it, because for many years my goal was to be known as the best bikini prep coach in the world. Right now, what that requires is things I'm not willing to do. Multiple drug compounds, a voice drop, it's no longer what I consider to be like my goal. I want to coach the best natural, or the best, I don't know. It's been tough for me, because I still think, someone like Daraja could still do it naturally win the Olympia. But it's been a tough pill to swallow for me to see what the division has become, because I truly thought of it as the best division in all of bodybuilding, female bodybuilding. You know this, women, I'm sorry, but they work harder than men. They question you less. They put the work in, and they just get great results. And so I loved helping women look the best they could possibly look, and do great things in the sport. I mean, I think I've won over 100 bikini pro cards, 200 overall titles. I've had 8 Olympians qualify and over 30 pro wins. But it's getting to a point now where, like, you know, literally the feedback, without saying it, is, yeah, you just need to up the dose. You need to be bigger. You need to be bigger. And it's like, man, that's not what most women want. They don't want to just keep getting bigger.
Yeah, I would add, for women, there is a lot less ego, and they are a lot more interested in learning, as far as what I've gathered. Oftentimes,
and they love the culture of the sport. So, like, they include their friends and family. You and I know this. When you're in prep, or when I'm in prep, I ain't hanging out with no people. I don't want to know nobody. Women are different. Women want that community. And that's how I became Team Pro Physique. I never wanted to be Team Pro Physique. But when you're at a show with 15 athletes and they're like, "Hey, coach, can we get some shirts?" You're like, "Yeah, I guess I'll make a shirt. It says Team Pro Physique." And then that's how that started. Because women just treat the sport differently. You know, you coached Brian Decosta. I've coached Brian Decosta. I've never had anybody reach out to me because Brian told them to work with me. Guys are different. They don't want that. But girls are like, "Oh my gosh, I have the best coach. You should work with him too." It's a completely different thing.
Which, by the way, that move to get him to compete as a natural bodybuilder was absolutely genius. And once I saw him in board shorts, or once I saw him in a pair of trunks, I was like, dude, this guy's going to be a world champion. It's just a matter of time.
When I met Brian, I didn't. It's weird when you meet someone who's so gifted genetically, and so I mean, the guy's a fucking Adonis. He's a beautiful man. Like, you're like, damn, dude, like, how'd you get this genetic lottery of thing?
I felt the same way, bro.
I just expected him to be an ass.
Yeah.
Dude, the guy can grind. He's got another gear. He doesn't have an ego. He's super nice. And I was like, man. So when he mentioned to me he was thinking about competing in a bodybuilding show, I said, and he's like, "Would you be interested in coaching me?" I said, "Brian, I'm not wasting my time. If you're not trying to be a world champion, I don't want a part of it." And he's like, "That's what I want to do."
Yeah.
And that's what he became within like 3 years of that. And so, yeah, it was awesome to see. But a part of it was I strategically made him train with Doug Miller once.
No kidding.
Yeah. I said, "I want you to go train legs with Doug.
Just to see what it's like." Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I didn't even know he used to train at the same gym as Doug in Virginia, like 15 years ago.
No way. So that was the gym of all those videos of Doug pulling 405 for like 25 reps.
Yeah. Imagine like Brian seeing that. You like think you're tough shit in your gym. Doug Miller's in your gym.
Yeah. I cannot tell you how many years I tried to chase that record down. I was like, dude, if Doug can do it, I can do it. And I try.
No, I got hurt more than a few occasions.
Yeah.
I think I got 405 for 10 once, but like,
yeah.
Like, no, Doug was, I know he got somewhere in the 30s at one point, dude. He was getting
He hit 30, I think, or maybe 32 or something.
Yeah.
And like the first time I ever saw the 405 for 20, I mean, my jaw like just dropped, and I was like, holy crap. And then I remember I worked up to that 405 for 20. And then after that, like my back just wasn't handling it anymore. So awesome, man. Well, let's go ahead and let's dive into some rapid fire questions. These, obviously, like, you can keep them as short as you want, but I just want to get some wisdom from you, because again, like, I know that there are not very many people in the industry as a whole that have as much experience as you. So this could be for new athletes. This could be for coaches. This could really be for anybody. So first question is, over the last 15 years, what would you say is the biggest mistake prep coaches are making working with women?
The biggest mistake prep coaches are making working with women, I think it's the same problem back when I first started coaching. They treat them like men.
Very good response.
Macronutrient ratios are off. Training volume is too high. And not taking into account that most women are type A and carry a lot of stress.
Yeah. Yep. Question 2. If you could wave your magic wand, as you articulately stated earlier, what paradigm would you like to see change in the health and wellness industry as a whole?
Just the quick fixes, you know, the GLP-1 shots, and I think those should be reserved for people that are actually medically diagnosed with an issue. You know, if you're 15 pounds overweight, you shouldn't do GLP-1s. I see that all the time.
Yeah. In an insulin resistance crowd, I think that there's a good premise or foundation to implement that, just to get them going, dude. Just to get the motivation going. And then you lock in the foundational habits that we know work very, very well, lock in those habits, and then you help them transform their life. But the reality is now it's marketed to anyone. Yo, you want to lose 10 pounds because you got a little chub around your waistline? Oh, here you go.
Will, I had a doctor suggest one of my prep clients use it. I was like, what was the purpose? Well, she said it will help me with my appetite. I said, what? You don't have a problem with your appetite.
Yeah, you don't have a problem.
You're hitting your macros every day. So now I'm like, okay, are doctors getting paid to sell this shit?
Mm-hmm.
They're getting kickbacks.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
100%.
Okay, now we have a whole other problem. Are doctors monetizing their fucking degrees?
They're being incentivized. Yeah, they're being incentivized, of course.
The same thing with, the hormone therapy clinics that are like, oh, someone probably just needs testosterone, but they want them to be on 4 peptides. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, let's just do the TRT and see. You don't need the peptides, because then you don't know what's actually working. Mm-hmm. So then I'm like, okay, what's the markup on these peptides? That's the way my brain works. I'm so troubled.
Yeah, I think what I've noticed is that for a lot of individuals that start off with God-given ability to be a natural athlete and build a really solid foundation there, if they happen to just go a less is more approach, the ability for them to transform their physique is incredible. But when you get these individuals that maybe have lackluster genetics, they start working with a coach, and all the coach does is just continue to up the dose. And this person never has a shot. And then that person ends up retiring from bodybuilding, and then they have all these health issues they have to spend the next 3 years trying to fix. That's a really big problem.
Will, one of the things I struggle with is seeing athletes that I've coached as natural for a few years. They switch to another coach.
Yeah.
That coach literally just puts them on a bunch of drugs. Then perhaps they even go to the Olympia. They get 33rd place at the Olympia. Their jaw is out to here. Their voice is 4 octaves deeper, and that ain't ever going back. Mm-hmm. And what I'll be curious to know in the years ahead, will they regret it? Will they be like, I went to the Olympia, cool? Or are they going to be like, because do you remember who got 33rd at the Olympia 3 years ago?
Never.
No.
So I'm going to give you your flowers here. You've been extremely consistent with content as a coach, travel, wins. The amount of results that you've turned over in the last, 10 plus years is absolutely incredible. And how you manage to keep up with it all, I don't even know. But what keeps you going?
I just think it's the people for me. I say this every weekend when I go to shows. If I didn't like the people I was around, I wouldn't be able to do it. Mm-hmm. I've done enough as far as coaching results. I say this all the time. I'd make more money if I stopped going to shows. If I just sat here at my desk, stopped flying, stopped traveling, and just coached from my desk, mm-hmm. I'd make more money. So it's definitely not the money thing. I love to get to know the people. I love to see them achieve their goals, talk to their loved ones, their friends, their families, husbands, wives. Seeing, my favorite type of interaction is, thank you for giving me my wife back. Thank you for giving me my daughter back. She loves bodybuilding, but before it was like she was a ghost of herself. And now she looks great and feels great and she's getting results. And so, yeah, for me, it's definitely the people, and being around some of the other coaches on the team. It's just, we're all I think making this sport a better space.
Yeah.
So I don't know. When people are like, yeah, you work a lot. I don't feel like I work enough. I guess that's probably an internal problem.
Not to say you're an overachiever by any means, right? All right, next question. Your biggest goal for yourself, as well as biggest goal for an athlete over the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, 3 to 5 years is going to be some big years for me. For myself, I'm continuing to evolve as a dad, spending more time with my kids that are all coming into their own. They're now these ages where they're not just, little beings that you got to take care of. They're actually dynamic people. In 5 years, my oldest son will be 16. Yeah. So that's like, I want to be a really good role model for him. It's been fun for me. I've been bringing them into the gym to work out with me. I have a rule. They're not allowed to go on their iPads until they work out. And listen, it can be just jumping jacks. Well, we're not squatting and power cleaning and all that stuff, but like,
I got you.
I got Sloan doing some deadlifts and stuff like that. But so for me, the next 3 to 5 years is just, I think I'm starting to feel confident that I've done enough as a coach. I think there's this, for a long time, there's this feeling of like, do I belong? Do I fit? I've got the confidence now that I know I belong and I fit. So I want to continue to keep that coaching level up while I just establish my life for, to be happy for the next 30, 40 years, because I'm going to be 50 this year. So I'm not a kid anymore. I feel like a kid. Sometimes I act like a kid, but yeah, like I want my life to be set up so that I can really provide for the kids, be the best coach possible, and just to be happy, honestly, just being happy.
Yeah, that's incredible. I oftentimes think about that. So having 4 kids of my own, I think about Malayla's 11 now, is obviously the same age as Sloan. And I think, man, 3 years, 5 years, like she's going to be a teenager. And then before you know it, she's going to, hopefully by then I would have, downloaded enough positive things into her to where she can be a successful adult. But when you're really thinking about being a parent, for me, it's just trying to make sure that all of my children end up substantially better than I am. You know what I mean? To be able to leave a legacy for them to look for me and actually want to come to me later on in life, whether it be for wisdom or for knowledge or for whatever it is. And that's something that I think about every day. So I love that response. And last but definitely not least here, what advice would you give to any new physique coaches that are out there trying to, put themselves into this industry now in 2025?
Yeah, I think there's probably the urge to focus on the internet. But, call me an old head, what you will. What got me into this sport was getting involved, was deciding to do my first show. And then you hire a coach who you don't even realize is going to be one of your lifelong best friends. And then you meet people like Will, because I go to support Lane at a show. And now Will's been a lifelong friend. And then, you go to a seminar and you meet someone like Dr. Joe or Dr. Bill Campbell or Dr. Dominic. So like, you don't realize the connections you're going to make by getting involved. I would have never made those connections if I was just a keyboard warrior. Get off your ass, go get involved in the community. You may find out you don't want to be a part of it. You may find, wow, I love this. I love the smell of Protan. I can't wait to shave my ass. Like, it's old school thinking, but get out there and go be a part of it. It's get involved. I promise you, you should not be a physique coach if you've never done bodybuilding shows. Like that's a hard line for me. The worst bodybuilding coach in the world right now, in my opinion, coaches some amazing athletes, has never competed.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the foundation of being good in any profession is having a network and having a community and having people that are in it with you. And something that I can definitely highlight that you've done an incredible job at with Team Pro Physique is you've created a community and you've created a family. And that happens because you're there. Right. So Paul, I really appreciate your time, man. Obviously I feel like I could talk to you forever, but out of respect for you and your time, I just want to say thank you very much for opening up your calendar to speak with us today, to be able to provide value to everybody that listens to this podcast. And again, from a coaching perspective, coach to coach, I do not know any other coaches that are as consistent as you are with your craft. And I just want to say you're doing an awesome job, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. And we'll definitely do it again now that we've got now that we broke the ice.
All right. Awesome. So if our audience by now doesn't know where to find you, which he ain't hard to find, ladies and gentlemen, can you tell them where they can find you? What are your top platforms and all that?
My favorite is still YouTube. I do post on Instagram. I need to do better about TikTok. I've been catching up on my Gary Vee content. He's getting me out of my head. I'm gonna start posting some more on these other platforms, but those are the big three. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome, man. Well, all right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Hey Coach Radio. On behalf of myself, Will Grazione, and Coach Paul Revelia, we appreciate y'all listening to this podcast episode. And if you have any questions for us, please feel free to reach out to us on those respected platforms. And if you liked what you heard in this podcast episode, go ahead, go down there and leave us a 5-star review and a rating. We'd really appreciate it. God bless you. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.